Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, good evening to those who are joining us online from around the world. We are happy that you could be with us this afternoon. My name is Omolade Adnumbi, and I'm the director of the African Studies Center. So this is the third in the Colloquium series for our UMAPS scholars, and as always, we are grateful to all of those who support us, who make this program very strong, particularly Office of the President, Office of the Provost, the Department of Afro-American and African Studies, Center for Global Health Equity, and of course the families of scholars back on the continent of Africa who let them come join us here this afternoon to participate in this program. So we are thankful to all of you. So this afternoon we've got three presenters, and I'll introduce all of the three presenters in the order in which they will present. At the end of the presentation, there will be a Q&A session, and as always, if anyone online would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand button of your Zoom link, and I will be happy to read your questions to the presenters. And of course, for those in the audience, there will be a microphone going around at the end of the presentation for you to ask your questions. So each of the presenters will have 20 minutes to present their research to us. And our first presenter today is Dr. Narh Hargoe. Dr. Hargoe is a lecturer in the School of Performing Arts at the University of Ghana. He is also the artistic director of the Ghana Dance Ensemble at the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana, Legon. Dr. Hargoe holds a PhD in ethnomusicology from the University of Cape Coast, Ghana, a Master of Fine Arts and a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of Ghana. His research interest lies within the domain of dance aesthetics, performance studies, and semiotics. Here at Michigan, Dr. Hargoe has been collaborating with Professors Robin Wilson and Christian Matijameka of the School of Music, Theater, and Dance. Dr. Hargoe's presentation today is titled Klama Religious Dance in Ghana, Encountering Dangme Culture. Next is Nancy Awori. Nancy is a tutor at the Department of Media and Communications at the Multimedia University of Kenya, where she also received a Bachelor's of Arts in Film Production and Animation. She has a Master's in Women's and Gender Studies from the University of Western Cape, South Africa. And here at U of M, Nancy is working on a research project that aims at exploring the representation of lesbian subjectivities in contemporary Kenyan films, with specific focus on the film Rafiki, produced and directed by Wanori Kahiu. Nancy is collaborating with Professor Larry LaFontaine-Stokes of the Departments of American Culture, Romance Languages and Literature, and Women and Gender Studies. So Nancy's presentation today is titled Lesbian, Bisexual, Queer Women's Representation in Contemporary Kenyan Films. And last but not the least is Dr. Ugochi Adaku Okengwu. Dr. Okengwu is a senior lecturer in the Department of Computer Science, University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Dr. Okengwu received a Master's of Science and PhD in Computer Science from the same University of Port Harcourt. Our research interest is in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data analysis. And while here at Michigan, Dr. Okengwu is collaborating with Professor Reda Mihalsia of the College of Engineering with a specific focus on sentiment analysis using climate change textual data to develop a machine learning model that will classify the emotion polarity of social media users. And our presentation this afternoon is on sentiment analysis on climate change using deep learning. Please join me in welcoming these excellent scholars. So now.
Right. Oh, good afternoon, everyone, and good evening, Ghana. My presentation is titled Klama, Religious Dance in Ghana, Encountering Dangme Culture. So as culture demands, permit me to perform this right. So this will be my presentation outline, and I'll move on straight. Where can we find the Dangmes in Ghana? They're in Africa, of course, and West Africa to be specific. In West Africa, you have Ghana, and in Ghana, you locate them in the Greater Accra region, where we have the people of Ngo and Pram Pram. The research was conducted in Pram Pram. So, the motivation. Well, as an ethnographer, I had wanted to understand this Klama religious phenomenon, to learn how the people know it, learn how the people think of it, to learn and understand Klama from the perspective of the indigenes. And so I went to the field, and then I started asking questions. I located a traditional priest and secured a date for an interview. So I asked him, what is Klama? And then he sat quietly for a while, and then he said, we sing Klama, we dance Klama, and we practice medicine through Klama. So I captured this as their concept of Klama, or the Dangme worldview. And then I went to the literature to look at Klama. What is it? Then I realized from these scholars, led by Nketia, they claim Klama is fundamentally musical and has both vocal and instrumental sections to it. By their definition, Klama passes commentary on the life cycle activities, that is starting from birth all the way till death. And so I went further to look at Klama as medicinal practice, and then I came across Botry's scholarship on it. Moving further, Klama as a dance form, Saki and myself did some work within the dance realm. But so far, no research has been done in looking at the meanings in Dangme culture through the lens of Klama dance. And that is the focus of my work here. So the objective is to attempt an interpretation of Dangme culture through the lens of Klama ritual dance. In order to understand Klama, you need to look at the pre-worship preparations, the worship performance itself, and then afterwards, what you learn out of it. So, pre-worship preparations, Klama deities are very, very holy, and they don't like dirt. And so, before any preparation, before any Klama ritual or Klama ceremony takes place, there needs to be cleansing. So, the shrine is cleansed, the shrine is whitewashed with the color white because they are pure, because also white stands for purity. So they need to clean the environment, demarcate performance locations, clean the environment, and also the mediums themselves. Now, mediums, I'm using mediums here because they are the people through which the deities manifest themselves. And when the deities manifest, mediums now become deified. Then they become the deity. They embody the deity. So when I speak of deity manifesting, I'm talking about the spirit over, or taking or possessing the mediums. All right. And this interaction occurs between the mediums or the deities and the officiant who is in charge of every ceremony. Now, beyond the cleansing of the environment also, the musical instruments are also kept in pristine condition. The reason being that the musical instruments are known to be the deities also. And so whenever the musical instruments are in pristine condition and they are being played or being intoned, it is the voice of the deities that are speaking. And so that one would also have to be kept in pristine condition. And then there's also the maintenance of musical instruments, as I have said. Moving on, this is the outline of the performance area. We have the officiant, as I mentioned, who is the intermediary between the deities and the community members. So he sits in between. He mediates between the deities on one hand and then the community members on the other. And then over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, these are the spots to the officiant's right, where when the deities manifest, and they change into their costume, they come and line up over here, awaiting their turn to approach the officiant to engage with him. This is the performance area. At the fringes of the performance area are the audience members, and the audience members are made up of children, and then the adults, and then the older generations. Now, children and the youth are very important here because they learn the tradition, they learn the culture of the people, they learn their own identity, and it helps in revival and renewal of the Dangme culture. So here, I want to establish that Klama is a religious dance encounter and transformation between the deities and the community members of Pram Pram. This encounter is facilitated by the officiant who mediates between the deities and the community. The encounter is divine and dangerous at the same time. And we understand why as we move on. So please, can you play the track for me? Here, I will invite you to watch this video, and afterwards we'll have a discussion of it. As the video plays, we need to take note of this medium who's been deified at this moment. And she's changed into her costume, and she's coming. As she approaches, she greets all the way from right to the left. And as we move on, I'll interpret. Can you please play it? I'll give an interpretation of it. So after greeting everyone, she now approaches the officiant. Thank you very much. Thank you. And we move on. Yes. So now to look at the meanings. Before I start, this deity here, or this medium here, gave me the scale of my life as an ethnographer in the field. And as an ethnographer, I had sought permission to enter the field and to film, so you could see over here for the research. But then I did something. I waded through the audience, having been given a specific place to sit and watch and take my shots. I had wanted a different angle to my shots. And so I waded through the audience and then got in front of the performance. And then I took my camera and I started shooting. And then she came and virtually attacked me. Why? Because I had transgressed, I had trespassed the boundary that was set, and I had got into a realm that I'm not supposed to be there. So she came as a guard of the culture. She came and then sort of chanced upon me, terrified me really. And the people had to whisk me away so that she got calm. But then, besides that, greeting is very, very important in Dangme culture. Dangme culture esteems anyone who greets because it endears you to one another. It shows a mark of respect also. The greeting is performed in a particular manner. You greet from right to the left. Greeting from right to the left is the path of life. Why? Because as you greet, you bring your hand close to your heart and it shows warmth. Now, the path of death is clockwise because the clock always runs out on us. So in this presentation, I have 20 minutes. I'm sure I have less than 10 minutes to go. So the time is running. But the path of life is the counterclockwise. It never ends. It is a continuum. So it's a continuum between the living and then the spiritual realm. Greeting from right to left shows sincerity. And shows sincerity because as you greet, you open your palm, greeting from right to the left. You show a clean palm means that you are coming with clean heart. You're showing love. You don't have ulterior motive. And so greeting is important. And in the video that you watch, you realize that when the deity was coming, she also started greeting. And she raised her arms to show the same palm, sincerity. So as the deities do this, they encourage the humans also to learn from them, to show sincerity at every point in time. So Dangme culture also encourages the show of sincerity. Moving on, as the deities manifest and perform, like her, she approaches the officiant to interact. The rest would have to join a queue, and they maintain law and order. They are starting by joining the queue. And so as humans, we also have to join the queue. We also have to abide by rules and regulations, abide by law. If you don't do that, they will check us. And so we are always encouraged within Dangme culture to be law-abiding people. If you go contrary to the law, you are conceptualized as someone who is sick. You are not well because you are going off the balance, and we'll get to that one. In performance also, like I said, anti-clockwise is the path of life. It is continuity. It connects the living and the spiritual realm. It's also a revival, renewal of life. Clockwise, like I said, it's a path of death, misfortune. But when you realize that the mediums or the deities are performing, and they are performing in clockwise motion or path, which means that it's a warning to us, it's a caution that something is about to happen. And that is where the ritual agents would have to perform right to understand what is going on and avert all those ones. Moving on, when a deity is also performing, and he or she performs in a straight line, they are communicating truth. They are communicating focus, moving forward, positivity, fidelity, consistency, and virtue. And this kind of cultural ethos are being performed into being each time there's a Klama worship performance. When the medium starts moving in a serpentine form, it's a mark of insincerity. It shows suspicious character. And so people who are of suspicious character in the community would have to be looked at twice and then put in the right order. It also shows dishonesty. Now, when you realize that the deity is moving this way, like you said, like it happened in the video, she was moving this way, it's a mark of reflection. Also, it's asking us to take one moment at a time, to reflect, to think through situations, to look before leaping. Here we move on to the wellness realm. And I said anyone who does not go by the rules established is unwell. For us, Dangmes, our concept of illness is that oje ogbelano or oje ongleno. You are out of sync, you are out of balance, you are out of tune with nature. And so anyone who is out of tune with nature would have to seek intervention from the Klama adepts who are also trained in herbal medicine. And so herbal medicine is also very important over here. And that is a research conducted by Butche, who looked at wellness in Klama. Prior to any ritual performance, Klama mediums are fortified. They go through, they use herbal preparations to cleanse themselves spiritually and physically. Some of these herbal preparations are also what is used when someone is having physical illness or headache or having an abscess or something. They use herbs also to cure the person. Now, the performance ground prior to performance is also sanctified. sometimes they burn certain herbal leaves or stuff to ward off anybody who comes there with evil intention. So just as the Christians will incense the church, they also have their own form of incense. There's also the psychological aspect of healing that goes on in Klama. And all these wellness are also integrated into Dangme culture. And so Dangme culture wants everybody to be well. When I am well and you are well, the entire community is well. When someone is not well, the community is not well. So the person would have to be synced, or the person have to be brought in sync with nature. There's also the physical wellness where you join in the dance, but you don't enter the boundary. You stay off the boundary and then you do your dance. And children learn by sitting down quietly and assimilating everything. And then when they get home, they try their hands on it. There's also the ingestion of herbal medication. And some are also applied on the body. There's also preparation and carriage of the same herbal mixture or potion, like it is over here, during a performance to kind of cleanse the whole village and then put them in that mood for worship. So what happens after a performance? After a performance, it is anticipated that there's a revival, there's a renewal of Dangme culture. And this is done as the youth also join in and learn. They learn of their own identity, they learn of their own worldview. They also learn Klama songs, they learn the color symbolisms, they learn the mannerisms of each deity, so that when a deity comes and is performing, they know which deity is performing, and the movement that the deity is performing, they're able to decipher the communication that is going on. And then also, there's the establishment of relationship between the cosmic beings and then the humans. And so conclusion. Here I'm concluding that Klama religious dance as an embodiment of Dangme culture is very important in the revival and renewal of Dangme worldview and Dangme culture. The entire community benefits through the regenerative process toward the maintenance of communal balance, healing, and homeostasis. There's also embodiment of shared sociocultural values, reaffirmation of ties between the humans and the deities, and the maintenance of aesthetic sensibilities. Thank you very much. Before I step out, I want to thank University of Michigan, and then the UMAPS program, and then my home university, the University of Ghana, the African Studies Center, headed by Professor Omolade Adombi. Thank you very much. And then Professor Andres Kodze, Immediate Past Director, ASC. Thank you very much. Teye Pam, Mawa Hassan, thank you very much. And then my host professors, Professor Christian Matthias Mecker of University of Michigan Dance. Thank you. Professor Robin Wilson, University of Michigan Dance. And then my lovely cohort. Thank you so much for your support. We are dancing on Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hargoe. Next is Nancy Awori.
Thank you. Am I audible enough?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you turn it on?
Yeah, I did. Hello, hello, hello. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Nancy, and I'll take you through my presentation, which looks at how LBQ women are represented in contemporary Kenyan films. I'll just go straight to the point. So some of the concepts that I'm talking about are things like gender identity and gender expression, which is basically how people choose to express their gender. And then there's what we call sex, which is, I'm supposed to look over there. And then there's what we call sex, which is what you are assigned at birth. So you can either be male, female, intersex, depending. And then there's what we call also sexual orientation, which is basically how you get attracted to someone. So you can get attracted to someone depending on so many factors. So it's a very fluid space. I move on. How are LBQ women oppressed in the context, in a Kenyan context? So I look at intersectionality, which is a theory that I use that was coined, or rather has a a contribution from Yuval Davis, and then I also use Judith Butler's concept on gender performativity, which talks about how people perform their gender. So like in the Kenyan context, the law is very clear. Homosexuals, they are liable to up to 14 years imprisonment. So depending on how the law is applied in a particular context, it really affects how people perform their gender. Then there's the issue of religion. Kenya is, it's a secular nation constitutionally, but we just recently got a Christian president. So what that means is, another layer of oppression. Then there's what we call race, cultural, and social norms. There are things like class, depending on whichever class you come from. If you come from a higher class, then definitely it's easier for you to maneuver the spaces compared to when you come from a lower class. And then there's something to do with language. Language plays a very great role. Like, for example, homosexuality in Swahili, it loosely translates to shoga. So when you say it in Swahili, there's a certain weight, or rather meaning, that it carries. What are the objectives of my study? So I look at how LBQ women are represented in available films in Kenya, and then I look at how can we increase their visibility, and then I also look at how we can increase positive visibility rather than just visibility, or rather than what is currently there is the negativity, the homophobia that is being popularized in films. What is the legal framework currently? So most African countries have harsh penalties that target same-sex relations. So I look at a country like Sudan, which has a death penalty when it comes to same-sex relations. I look at countries like my own Kenya, which has up to 14 years imprisonment. And then I look at a country like South Africa that recognizes same-sex relations. It is the only country in Africa that recognizes same-sex relations. What is the state in Kenya? So currently, when it comes to films, we just received this ban by the Kenya Film Classification Board, which is the board that classifies films in Kenya. So they just did place this ban. They actually just reinforced it because it has been there. So KFCB bans all movies with LGBTQ content in Kenya. What are some of the films I looked at? There's this Inkseba, which is more of a South African word. It loosely translates to as the wound. There's Rafiki. So Inkseba is a gay film. There's Rafiki, which is an LBQ film. And then there's I Am Samuel, which is a gay film from Kenya. So here I'm just talking about, again, Inkseba. It was produced in 2017. It's a drama film that was produced by John Trengove. It's a South African film. Rafiki is a Kenyan film that was produced in 2018, which forms the basis of my, my work. And then it's a drama film. It's an LBQ film, and then it was done in Kenya. And then there's I Am Samuel, which was produced in 2020 in Kenya, from Kenya as well. It was produced by Peter Morimi, and then it's a documentary production. So what are the main concepts or findings from my work? So I look at concepts like homosexuality being an African, which is a very wrong notion. So I try to deconstruct it or demystify this notion. Then there's religion and homosexuality, there's culture and homosexuality, and then there's homophobic violence. So all these themes or all these concepts are portrayed in the films that I looked into, or rather the film that I looked into. Then there's, so there's this homosexuality, and I say it is indeed African. And I give examples from scholars like Sylvia Tamale, who is from Uganda, and there's also Zethu Matebeni from South Africa. And they give examples of existence of homosexuality during the pre-colonial times. So they give example like the cave paintings of the San people from Zimbabwe, which depicts two men who engage in some form of ritual sex. Then there's this Mudoko Dako, who are effeminate males from northern Uganda, who were treated as women and they could marry men. And then there's this king from the Buganda kingdom, which is one of the largest traditional kingdoms in Uganda, that he was gay, and this was during the 19th century, before, during the pre-colonial period. And then there's the Ndebele and Shona from Zimbabwe, the Azandes in Sudan and Congo, the Nupes in Nigeria, and the Tutsis in Rwanda and Burundi, who engaged in same-sex acts for spiritual nourishment. And then I say that it's very ironical that a president or whoever, a leader or someone who will come and stand, in front of you wearing a three-piece suit that has been imported from who knows where, is using an iPhone that where it has been made, using English. I mean, English is not an African language. So there we go. So it is very ironical for leaders to claim that this concept is an African, but them, everything in them is definitely an African. Then what then is alien to Africa? So what is alien to Africa are these Abrahamic religions that claim homosexuality is an African, these laws that criminalize same-sex relations and homophobia. Homosexuality is African, homophobia is un-African. There's the issue of homosexuality and religion that I also try to contest. So Kenya is a secular, in the context of Kenya, Kenya is a secular nation, and by a secular nation, I mean a nation that respects all religion. All religion are supposed to be treated equally. But the issue of double standards when it comes to how we practice religion in Africa, religious people, I being one of them, we are very selective in the way we practice religion. There are things that work for us. Like, let me just give a very basic example. In Kenya, we got a new Christian president. And recently, he unleashed his cabinet. The cabinet has people who have murder cases. The cabinet has people who are still, who are law offenders. That's what I mean. So there's a way the law only works for the minority, and when it comes to the majority, the law does not apply. And I'm talking about religious laws. So 80% of homophobic violence in Kenya traces its ways back to what we call religion. This is very absurd. Religion existing in the same sentence with violence, it's very absurd. So the projection of what I call, by there I mean religion, the projection of their personal standards on everyone. Because you do things a certain way, you're convinced it's the only formula, and that is what religious people do. Me being one of them, sorry. It's like saying, my mom is the best mom in the world, but not being able to conceptualize that everyone has a different experience with their mothers, and their mothers are the best mom in the earth, and it is very okay for it to exist like that. So there's also the issue of homophobic violence, and I'm just, in my work, I'm trying to explain how homophobic violence or homophobia is a colonial imposition to Africans. What is in our DNA is homosexuality. What is not in our DNA is homophobia. And then what are some of the recommendations when it comes to production of films? So I recommend stories to be told from insider perspective. So far, films that have been done, like for example, Rafiki, the one that I looked at, the story was done by an outsider, and when I was walking around, I was getting reviews or recommendations from people. They were like, the film is good, but when it comes to the fact that it was done by an outsider, it did place, it did put some doubt to them. So they felt like there was need for us to tell stories from an insider perspective, especially films that capture some of this content. And then there was also need for us to adopt different narratives. And by different narratives, I just gave an example of a documentary production. And for example, with a documentary, you capture as it is, compared to when, you do drama. With drama, you can either go overboard or, So there's a way documentary captures it is, and there was a I'm recommending a documentary production. And then there's I encourage multinational productions or collaborations, especially to countries that, that have some of these bans, like Kenya. And that is what Rafiki, the film, did. You know, they cannot produce it in Kenya, so they partner with companies from, for example, Denmark. That is what Rafiki did. So it partnered with a company from Denmark, and they were able to produce it from Denmark, not even in Kenya. And then there's need for us to capture themes that that do not popularize homophobia. So in the films that I looked at, most of the themes that are being popularized are homophobic. So there's need for us to shift the dynamics and talk more positively about homosexuality, and to be very specific, LBQ. So I talk about Ubuntu, and I say there's need for us to embrace Ubuntu for us to be able to change the dynamics. And by Ubuntu, I mean talk of humanity, talk of compassion, talk of, you know, all these good values. There's need for us to embrace them for us to be able to achieve some of these things. And then how do I finish? What really matters is the respect for human dignity and diversity. You know, we are a diverse community. There's need for us to embrace diversity rather than being very rigid in the way we think. There's need for us to be very progressive in the way we think. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Next is Dr. Ugochi Okengwu. So we're moving from Kenya to Nigeria. Yes.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Ugochi, as you can see, University of Port Harcourt. My topic on sentiment analysis, climate change using deep learning. I'll try to look at introduction by going through overview of AI, machine learning, natural language processing, sentiment analysis, climate change. Then we look at the objectives and methodology and some of the results we have, because the work is still ongoing. Artificial intelligence, as we know, mimics human intelligence in the area of visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, translation of languages. And branches of artificial intelligence, we have several branches. We have machine learning, neural network, expert system, robotics, natural language processing, fuzzy logic. But the one that is making wave now is machine learning. That's the one that is making AI very, very popular. AI is creating impacts in diverse areas. Healthcare, we've heard about several things AI can help us as medical doctors do smartly. Education, agriculture, precision and smart agriculture, law enforcement, being able to decide cases with AI, financial fraud, detecting anomalies, customer service. Most times when we call some companies, we speak with bots, social and media apps. Our focus today is going to be on machine learning, deep learning, and natural language processing. We'll try to look at what is machine learning. It has to do with developing a machine that will learn from set of data sets. And these data sets could be structured or unstructured. When we say structured, we're talking about a table that have rows and columns with values in it. Unstructured, we have tests, data set that is not organized. So machine learning can, using machine learning technology, the machine will learn from this data set and give you an output. And from what we have seen so far, machine learning is a black box. You don't really know what's happening inside. You see the input, the data set, you feed it in, and it does a lot inside, and you see your output. And inside this machine learning, there's several types of learning that go through, depending on the kind of data set you have and the particular problem you want to solve. We determine the kind of machine learning type you're going to use. Supervised learning will take data sets that already have targets. So when you feed in your data to your machine, the machine will learn already that when this happens, this is what you get. So Going forward, it already knows. So for unsupervised learning, you have a data set that do not have any target yet. So you can cluster, your machine will be able to learn how to cluster, looking at patterns that are alike, and be able to, give you a result on the data set you are feeding. Then we have reinforcement learning. This particular learning is done during game development. And most times when you're developing game apps, when you're playing chess, you make a particular move, you get a reward. So if the machine learns that if I move this way, I get a reward, that machine will be able to give you results next time when it sees such a move. So after looking at all this, from the data set we feed into machine learning, you can get insights, patterns, decision-making, evidence-based decisions you can get from that. Then deep learning is an aspect of machine learning. It's a subset of machine learning that adds layers of knowledge in what's called an artificial neural network that handles more complex challenges than the traditional machine learning. And deep learning has different layers, and that's what makes it deep learning, and it gives a better result than the normal machine learning. Then we have the natural language processing. It is an ability of the machine to learn human language and be able to interpret it. You can see the machine learning what a human being can learn as per the language. It could be in Chinese, it could be Igbo, my language. So NLP enables computers to understand human language. And also, NLP uses machine learning and deep learning algorithms to discern the context of a particular text you feed into it. So what we're doing to my project, the project I'm doing is focused on sentiment analysis. And according to Liu 2010, sentiment analysis is the computational study of opinions, sentiments, and emotions expressed in text. So all the messages we send on social media, one can be able to put them together and understand what you're saying, what emotions, the opinions. Then we know the cyberspace, that's where we live our life these days, is a notional environment in which communication over network occurs. A lot of people are moving on the road, testing, you're sending a lot of information into the cyberspace. So social media since 2000 has been a place where you can get a lot of data sets to check or analyze what is happening. So, but before we go into the main thing, I would like us to know something about AI because it's making so much waves. But we know for now, from what we've gathered, that the one we're dealing with is the one we call weak AI or narrow AI. So just think about all the good things AI is giving us, and we're still in the weak or narrow one. So what will happen when we go to the strong AI or generalized AI, or the third one, which is envisaged to be the super AI or conscious AI, where AI will be self-aware and will have conscience like a human being? Well, we have not yet been able to adequately define what conscience is. So maybe it's unlikely we will be able to create conscious AI in the near future. So moving forward, objectives. In this particular project, we started it while I came here. The project is to create awareness about climate change, insights on the sentiment about climate change, and also to show that NLP can help or support policymakers in making sense of large-scale, complex discourses across social media platforms. So why this research? Climate change, I know we've been hearing about it, and presently there's a COP27 going on in Egypt where they're discussing about climate change. The figure on the right-hand side is how our climate used to be, and the one on the left is how we're seeing it now. And the UN SDG goals, the 13, which is climate action, is what we need to really focus on, because we have found out that if we can focus on climate action, all the other 16 SDG goals will be taken care of. There is no other planet B for us. So climate change is a long-term shift in temperatures and weather patterns. We can see there was a time somebody was jubilating that he's seeing snow for after a very long time. That means things are changing. Our climate is changing. And these shifts may be natural or human-induced. So the one we are interested in is the human activities that have been the main driver of climate change. And primarily, there are a lot of gases that are being emitted into our atmosphere by these human activities. And these gases blanket the earth, they trap the sun's heat, and they lead to what we call global warming today. And these gases are known as the greenhouse gases. And these greenhouse gases are some of the gases we know of. Maybe we don't know they are the ones causing the climate change: carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, fluorinated gases. Some of them are even produced through our agricultural activities. So we need to watch it. So the human-induced climate change generates power through generating power, manufacturing goods, those activities, this fourth industrial revolution, cutting down forests, using transportation, powering buildings, producing food, all the things we enjoy in life, those activities contribute to climate change. So the effects of climate change, we can see the temperature keeps rising. We can see the sea levels keep rising. Because of global warming, we can see the Arctic sea ice keeps going down. We can see the ocean keep getting warmer every day. So, and recently in my country, Nigeria, we had a great flood that just happened and killed a lot of people. All these are due to human activities leading to climate change. This is my wonderful country, Nigeria, that has up to 220 million people, and the landmass is around 924,000 kilometers. You can see down there, the colored part is the place we call the Niger Delta, and it has just 7.5% of the landmass of the whole country. And this is the part of the country that produces what we call the crude oil that makes Nigeria very, very rich. And the way the crude oil is exploited, as well as the pollution that results from these activities, cause deep-rooted changes in the Niger Delta's landscape. So this is one of the activities handled by people. Initially, it used to be inside the creek. It started in 2016, but around 2019, 2020, it came very near to the cities where we live, where you will see things like this in your houses. Oh. You know, there are a lot of cancerous and non-cancerous illnesses that can come from this. And also, these particular particulates that are being emitted by this action, you know, exposes us to so many health issues, and it also contributes to global warming. And I'm not surprised if it could be why we have the flooding that is happening now. So the UN SDG 13 goal is telling us all we can do, the climate action: we should eat less, use bike if possible, use electric cars, you know, consider where you're going, you travel. If you don't need to make that travel, there's no need. So that is what led to us trying to get some of the insights we can use to help our government to make decisions that will affect us directly through social media textual data. And we looked at the Reddit. That was where we were able to get the data set we used. We wanted to look at Niger Delta, but we noticed that we couldn't get any data set. That means people are not talking about what they are suffering down there in my country. So we decided to look at it in a global level, and we were able to look at 18 subreddits in Reddit platform, and we were able to gather around 84,000 records. And we performed sentiment analysis on it, and this is the workflow or the methodology followed in dealing with sentiment analysis. When you collect the data like the one I told you of, you do the data processing, feature extraction, classification model, then you look at the model evaluation. So when we tried to perform those activities on our data set, we saw some things that when are these posts made? We realized that it started around 2011, and in 2020, people globally are so much aware about climate change, and people post more on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and in the 18th hour, that's around 6 p.m., around 7 p.m. Then also, we looked at the sentiment that people are expressing in their messages. We saw that for neutral was about 35 or 34,000 posts from the records we had. Then positive is about 26,000, negative is about 24,000. That means people are just neutral. People are not saying positive things so much about climate change. People are not saying negativity. They are just on the, that means people are not so much aware, or they're not feeling all the policies that we are talking about that could help us tackle this climate change. So looking at the sentiment polarity, we're trying to look at some days what people are saying and what they feel. You can see in 2022, most of the posts are neutral. And in 2017 is negative. It was even in 2016, we got a little bit of positive posts. So we also looked at the emotions, apart from the polarity, using the NRC lexicon, looking at these words, looking at posts that people make or things they say on social media. Does it represent fear? Does it represent anger, discourse about climate change? So we looked at just a day in 2016, and you can see you have negative, we have sadness in 2016. And we tried to bring out a little post, just one post, out of 1,000 of it on that day. We saw that what they were saying is a little bit negative. There was nothing positive about what was. You can see epic bird attack on guy with Cheetos. Maybe due to global warming, this bird came out from its habitat and attacked somebody. So those are the kind of emotions we saw there. And also, we went further to also look at the emotions per day, looking at a wider coverage. So we also looked at the words that are the top words in the test. We saw that in the couples we selected, we saw that climate had highest number of words. Change had, looking at the words, we can see that they are all talking about climate change. Maybe the new could be, maybe there's a new policy that came up that people are talking about. Then we also went into what we call the topic modeling in NLP. Is a technique in NLP. We use what we call the latent Dirichlet allocation. It treats its document as a mixture of topics and each topic as a mixture of words. So we were able to just select 8 topics that you can see. Applying that particular technique, we were able to see that some topics like carbon, in topic 1, you see carbon, solar power, that in most of the topics, the words are mixed. Then we went further to see the counts of these words in each of these topics. We saw that topic 5 had more words in it than other ones. Then trying to visualize this particular topic modeling, we use what we call the PyDavis library. It's an interactive platform whereby when you put your cursor on each of these bubbles, you'll be able to see a red mark on the right-hand side. And this shows the wider the bubble, the more topics or the more words are in that particular bubble. And each bubble represents a topic. So looking at topic 1, we put the cursor there. You will see climate change has up to 16 or more thousand words named climate change inside topic 1. Change up to 11,000, global just like that. You look at topic 4, you can see for topic 4 we have hydrogen as the one that has the highest number of words in that particular topic. So my time is up, but with this, we have seen that using NLP technique, exploring the social media with so much textual data, we can be able to make some decision of what is happening, how it's affecting people, what people are saying, and with that, we can give advice to policymakers, the government, to tell them the policies you're making, the actions you're taking, they are being effective or they are not effective. And I'll just conclude with this figure here. You can see all the data set we collected, climate change is the biggest. So that means really people are discussing about climate change. And I will leave us with this. Our climate is changing. Are you changing? Yes. So the climate action, we need to wake up. And this work was possible because of my wonderful host, Professor Radha. She's here. And the postdoc, she assigned me to Western Who. They were so wonderful. And that was why I was able to achieve this within these few months I was here. And I want to thank University of Michigan for giving me this opportunity. I also want to thank ASC with all the wonderful people, Professor Molade, Andres Cortez, Teye that is always arranging, Marwa that is always there for us. And I also want to thank my wonderful husband. I know he's watching. He's the one that made it possible for me to be here, keeping those boys there together so that I can focus. It has not been easy. So I just want to thank everybody that have made this possible. And I want to end with thanking the Almighty God who made it possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ugochi. Okay, everyone, please join me here so that we can start taking questions. Turn on your microphone. Please. All right, so we've got time for questions. And please, for those who are joining us online, signify your intention to ask questions by using the raise hand button, and there will be someone monitoring to let us know. And for you in the audience, please.
And everybody in the audience, wait for the microphone so that the people online can hear you.
Okay, please introduce yourself when you want to ask your question. There is one hand.
Thank you. My name is Gabriel Ayola. I teach at the Department of Afro-American and African Studies. My first questions, or maybe a series of questions or clarifications, goes to Dr. Narh. Listening to your presentation on Klama dance ritual, or religion dance as it's called, it reminds me of the culture where I'm from, the Yoruba culture in the southwest Nigeria, where we have some dances that are ritualistic, and there are some dances that are just for fun dance, you know. Maybe I missed that part in your presentation because I came in late in the middle of your presentation. So I'd like to know, one, that this Klama dance, is there anything like spirit possession in the process of it? And if there is, what does the medium that is being possessed by the spirit in the process of dance do? And if there are instances that the medium is saying something, are there people interpreting, you know, whatever the medium is saying to the audience? If you permit me again, when that happens, is it only the medium, the priestess or the priest or whoever that is usually being possessed by the spirit, or sometimes people in the audience are also caught up in that realm of dimension of being possessed by spirit? I just want some clarification about that. Then can I go on with my second question to Dr. Nancy?
Yeah, yes, please ask her.
Dr. Nancy, my question, thank you for your presentation about that minority issue of LBQ in Kenya. I'm just curious to know, are there books? Okay, first question is the restriction about who about this representation of this group. Is it by the government, quote and unquote, or by the people, the entire populace that say, no, we don't want this on our screen, this group being represented? That's one. Then again, are there books where, if things are not being done in films, if the LBQ are underrepresented in the films, do we have them in books in Kenya? Like, are there books that speaks to that people are reading in schools and colleges? Thank you.
All right, we have one online question. Oh, okay, so let's just do 2.
Okay, so these questions are from Jude Okoye, who is actually in the cohort to come in 2023, January. So the first question is to Narh. What is the acceptance rate of Klama among Christians and Muslims in Ghana? And then the second question is, apart from purity, what other factors informs the selection or the inhibition of medium by the deity? It has other smaller questions to it. Is there an age limit for human medium? Is the dance limited to just women? Is the playing of drums limited to just men? Second question is to Ugochi. Could the paucity of data set from Niger Delta, Nigeria be attributed to low use of Android or smartphones due to poverty and or poor power supply to charge phones?
All right, thank you. So we'll start with Nancy.
All right, thank you, George. To answer your first question on the restriction by the KFCB, the Kenya Film Classification Board. So the law is very clear that homosexuality is not allowed in Kenya. So it's from the law that KFCB just reinforces. So KFCB just reinforcing the law. And then your second question was on books from Kenya. I have not seen any. In any case, we are not taught anything to do with homosexuality in Kenya. So probably I am not aware. Probably they're there, but I have not seen any.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you talk about the short story that inspired the film Rafiki?
Oh yeah, the short story, it's from, it's a story by, what's the name of the lady? But it's a story from Uganda. So the person who did the story is from Uganda. And, the story is just depicting how 2 women fall in love. And then Wanuri just thought it's a good story to be done. Yeah, so that's how it was interpreted, or rather it was performed now in Kenya. So the story is from Kenya, it's from Uganda, but it was, done in Kenya as a film. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Narh.
Yeah. So let me start from the question from the audience here. So spirit possession, what does the medium do? So in the context of Klama, and let me establish that Klama, religious dance performance, it's a dance of encounter between the deities coming to have an interaction with the human world. And they do that through the mediums. They possess the mediums. And in possessing the medium, certain things would have to be in place. Like the environment has to be clean, the drums would have to be in place, the parameters would have to be set, and everybody would have to meet, and then the music starts. Now, in the course of the music performance, the chant within the song sets that environment alight, and then the mediums or the deities begin to manifest through the mediums. And when that happens, initially the mediums go through 3 phases. The first, they'll go into something like a fit. So if a medium is sitting down, she will start shaking. That's the first phase. You notice that when she's shaking. And then she moves on to the second phase, where he or she would have to take off her ornaments that are, if she's wearing necklaces or other things like a headgear, they will start taking it off. So they have assistants. When they realize that a medium starts shaking, they will assist the medium to take off those things. If they don't take it off in time, and they reach the second phase where they have to take it off, they will do that by themselves vigorously. So in order to prevent the mediums getting hurt, assistants are always there to help them take it off. And then when they get to the second phase, and then they take off those ornaments from them, they go into a changing room where they wear the regalia of the deity and then pick on the insignia of office or anything prop that symbolizes the deity. The deities have their own colors, they have their own style of dressing, they have their own ornaments that they wear. So that is what happens when a medium is possessed. And when she finishes wearing all this, then she becomes the deity. Good. Now moving on to the second one, who interprets it? This encounter is between the deity and then the officiant. And the officiant is the one that communicates with the deity. And the communication is in the form of singing, call and response, and then also the dance performance. And it is the movements that the medium performs, the patterns that they draw. That is what I explained, that if it is circular and it is counterclockwise, it is a part of life, it is regeneration, it is renewal of ties between the deities and then the humans. Also, the cues that the mediums or the deities form prior to coming to have that engagement also shows law and order. That even though the deities, they are observing law and order, so must their human counterparts. When they perform movements that are clockwise, which is a foreboding of maybe events that worse, adverse event that might happen, the ritual agents pick those sentiments and then they work on it. They conduct rituals later on to understand what calamity is trying to befall the community, and then they work on it either to avert it or to find an antidote to it. And then are the people in the audience possessed sometimes? Yes. Sometimes the deities take advantage to sort of marry a new medium. Mm-hmm. Just as Christians, they ordain a new priest, the same way the deities also ordain their own priest. So they take advantage, and then in the course of the performance, they ordain their own priest, or they select their own medium to worship or to manifest through. And so that is what happens. Now, back to online. What is the acceptance rate of Klama to Christians and Muslims? Well, the Dangme community, it's also another secular community. It has Christians more and Muslims and those who are also traditional worshippers. They coexist peacefully. So there's that perfect coexistence over there. And then also age, is it only, and what's the age limit? Mostly from what I've gathered, it's from the youth. The deity selects among the youth and then works through them. Age limit, I don't know their age, but youth, they should be in their teens. I think from the teens going up, yes. I've seen some teenagers also getting possessed. And just as it is a pride for a priest to be ordained in a Christian church, and that priest becomes a pride to his or her family, the same is also accorded whenever a deity selects a member of a particular household or a community. It's also hailed as being progressive because that culture would have to be renewed, and that forms part of the renewal of Dangme culture. And then are mediums only men, only women? No, the mediums are men and also women. Drum playing, is it only performed by men? So far, I've seen men perform or play on the drum. I've not come across a woman yet. I'm yet to see that. So I can't emphatically say that it's only men. Now, what men can do?
Women can do better.
Okay. Dr. Ugochi.
Okay. The question about Android, whether poverty, power, charging phones, why we couldn't get data set from Niger Delta. I don't think so, because when we checked, we see a lot of people talking about other things. When we tried to collect data from the hashtag BlackSuit on Twitter, we realized we saw people tweeting about Timaya, talking about other things. What it means is that people are not aware of what is happening.
Timaya is a musician, by the way.
Yes, he's a musician. People are not aware of what is happening in their environment, how it's affecting them, what is happening in the international world, pertaining to climate change. So if people know, they will talk about it. So I don't think it has anything to do with that. Thank you.
Okay, more questions? And please keep your questions short so that we can get more people to ask questions. Anna?
Okay, my name is Anna, and I'm also part of the UMAPS program for 2022 fall. So my question is actually directed to Dr. Ugochi. I just have 2 questions for you. The first one is that as Africans, it's really quite important that we try to have a look at the African perspective, particularly in terms of artificial intelligence and also what the African policy under the Agenda 2063 by the African Union is trying to actually promote per the Sustainable Development Goals, which you also made an influence to. My question is, how will your research influence issues that relate to understanding AI within African cultures, and particularly in your home country in Nigeria? And the second one is that issues of language is really quite important. And I'm just guessing out loud that in African cultures, in our vocabulary, we don't necessarily have languages can be able to transcend to include concepts such as climate change, Android, or perhaps artificial intelligence, as much as the English language does. And looking at your review, in terms of Twitter, you've analyzed social media, and you get a different answer as opposed to what you were actually directing towards people who participated in the research. How will you be able to create languages that is more acceptable to the African vocabulary so that the audience can be able to understand your research and the outcome?
Okay. Larry?
Hi, I am Larry LaFontaine-Stokes from the Department of American Culture. Congratulations to all 3 panelists, and thank you so much for your engaging presentations that invite us to think about the relationship between tradition, modernity, and social transformation. My question is for Nancy. I was wondering if you could tell us more about the reception or the viewing of Rafiki in Kenya, your own experience. How did you actually get to go see the movie at a movie theater? Is it circulating informally? Were people excited? Were the theaters full when it actually was allowed to show? If you could just tell us a little bit more about audience and that experience of screening Rafiki and the impact that you believe it might have made. Thank you.
All right, Sam, then we'll take one question from the
Thank you very
online
much.
audience.
Thanks for your insightful presentations. I have a question for Nancy and then a question for Narh. Narh, I think your presentation spoke interestingly about virtues and how respect and other things are portrayed through the ritual dance. And I'm thinking, currently we seem to be losing virtue, morality in our Ghanaian culture. But we find the ritual dance to be portraying that. How do you think ritual dance can significantly improve the morality issues, going on in our country? Because if we just dance and think that it is right, these things are good, but in society we don't portray them, then there's a problem. How can this help us solve issues of moral decadency in Ghana? Nancy, your presentation was interesting, and I'm concerned with the conclusions that were drawn from the presentation. I realized that you focused on 3 scholarly papers and then drew your conclusions upon them. I was thinking, did you find other papers that spoke otherwise to what these papers were saying, these 3 papers were saying, in the context that Homo the homosexuality is un-African? Did you see any other papers that said it is African? And how did you consider these papers in your work? And I was also thinking, now you're considering a whole of Africa, a continent like Africa, and then you're drawing conclusion from about 3 scholars, and some of the things they are looking at or have seen, images, dating back into the Asian times. If you come to issues, data sets, statistics, and in academia, and you want to use some data sets to represent the whole, do you think it would be enough to use these 3 papers to draw a general conclusion for a continent like Africa?
All right, thank you. One question from the online audience, then we'll ask our panelists to respond.
Okay, so this question is from, I hope I pronounced the name right, Artem Abzaliv, and it's to Ugochi. How do you see the role of Africa in combating the climate change? How is it different from other countries, for instance, USA or Germany? There's another question. Should I ask that?
Okay, quick.
Okay. So to Narh, I want to find out how the youth and Christians today accept this dance ritual and participate in this ceremony.
Thank you. So we'll start from Ugochi.
Yeah. The first question from R without an E, Africa, SDG, language, and the research. What I would say is there are a lot of natural language processing research being done, focusing on other languages apart from English, like Chinese. But for Nigeria and the Niger Delta where I was looking at, we have a lot of languages. And if you start looking at all the languages, that small unit I showed you there, you could have up to 50 languages. That one apart, then maybe it could be the reason why most people are not posting some of these things, maybe language barrier. Maybe they would prefer to post in Igbo or post in Ishekiri or post in Kalabari, But I still feel the problem is awareness, because people still post on other topics apart from climate change. So I feel if the awareness is created, people understand the implication of these activities and all the things that are happening around them, they will be able to talk about it in English. And most of the people that use these social media these days are young people that know about English, and they post about musicians and talk about so many other things. Then as for the research outcome, definitely the data set is global, and from what I told you, we didn't get any data set from Africa or from Nigeria, so there's no way the outcome focuses on Africa. But working with my host, we're looking at furthering this research because it's not concluded yet. Understanding how climate change will affect communities, and see how we can get another source of data set, not only the social media. Maybe we can look at media houses to see if they are talking about these black suits and things happening around the Niger Delta. Then this second question from online that talked about how do I see the state of climate change compared to US when you compare it to Africa. It still boils down to awareness and also being included while making these decisions. I just mentioned that they are having COP27 in Egypt, and they are making a lot of policies, and good thing Egypt is part of Africa. But the problem, because I listened to their opening ceremony. The problem they have is they keep talking, they keep saying so many things. The problem is mitigation, adaptation, to be able to help the populace be able to achieve, because it is our activities, as I've mentioned, that cause most of these things. So implementation of all these things will help to solve the problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Narh?
Yes, Sam, to tackle your question, we say that the child of Africa is a child of the community, or the African child is a child of the community. That means that any other person, when you realize that a child is going wayward or misbehaving, you have the chance to correct that child. But cosmopolitan living and current trends indicate that you don't correct anyone's child. And it's a challenge. You see a child misbehave and you correct the child goes to report to the parents will come at you. And so sometimes when you realize there are some of these challenges, it's a bit challenging to nip it in the bud. Capital punishment, corporal punishment is forbidden. And so even teachers, sometimes you are in the classroom and a child misbehaves, and you have to find some creative means of correcting the child. And so these are some of the challenges. But then at the community level, at the where we have some of these ritual dances, the children averagely behave differently. Sometimes in the capital cities or the cosmopolitan or urban cities, that is where you have some of these challenges of immoral behavior, and these are all influenced by social media. And so they have gadgets, and they are internet, and so they have access to a lot of things. They have a lot of information that even as parents we don't have an idea of. And so it's a bit challenging looking at the morality of the youth or children of these days. But then these ritual performances are sometimes restricted and semi-restricted. The semi-restricted ones, the youth are able to take part in it, but learn at the fringes. Okay, so it is a balancing act. We parents would have to try our best possible to instill discipline and then morality into our children, and then also regulate their access to technology. Now, moving on to the online question, how does the youth and Christians accept dance and do they participate in it? Yes, at the community levels, they do, but they stay at the fringes and learn and then go away because they're also having social media challenges over there. Sometimes they get close to the act, but they don't want to be involved. And so there's a challenge of recruiting more youth to join in the drumming, and sometimes it's becoming a challenge. The officiant that we have in Pram currently, Kwalote Nyavo, he is also, his worry is that who will take over from him when he passes on. People are not availing themselves, and it is the youth that will continue with that tradition. And so part of my research is also to interview him to do a biographical sketch of his life and understand why people or the youth are not willing to engage in these ritual performances, which are good for the community because we can learn a lot of things from our own identity and culture as Ghanaians and Africans. Thank you very much.
Nancy?
All right, to my very best host. So the reception of Rafiki when it comes to Kenya was very bad. And seeing that Kenya is a very conservative nation, then that means people are not even, people have not received homosexuality, or they're not even aware of it. So what did happen is that it was produced in 2018 around September, and when it was produced, they could not, it was banned actually. So they had like to petition for it to be, you know, put out there in the theaters. The attendance was very low because, I mean, and most of the people who showed up are people who probably identify with that particular sexuality. And then it was banned. It was then, the petition actually won. And then they were able, it was able to be screened for like 7 days, and then again it was banned. So the reception was very low, And compared to, like, for example, I've been to South Africa, and when you ask someone about Rafiki, they can clearly list everything. You know, they tell you everything about it. But when you come to Kenya, like Anne is here, I think this is the very first time you're hearing about Rafiki. So people do not know about Rafiki in Kenya. But I mean, when you come to the outside world, apparently people know each and every bit about it. When I come to your question about the papers, so those are not the only scholars I'm using in my research. It's just that, you know, you can, it's a presentation. I can't like list everybody. So I have other scholars. I have missionaries that came all the way from the West, and when they got to countries like Angola, they could easily see some of these practices. So I have other scholars that I just couldn't like put there. What was the other question? The other question was whether I considered papers that spoke probably the other way around about the content. No, I didn't. In any case, I didn't come across any. So the only papers I was focusing on were papers that talked about homosexuality being African. So I didn't come across any paper that was talking otherwise. Yeah.
All right. Okay, just one more question. Okay, we'll take two. Yes, Rodwell and Marco, please, real quick.
Oh, you're saying one question?
Yeah, just, no, I mean, ask your question, but make it straight to the point.
Okay, the first one is for Nancy, right? It's on the issue of homosexuality being African or non-African, right? Mm-hmm. In my view, the issue that most African leaders are questioning is the way in which it is being performed. It has become westernized. It has always been there, but it was performed in a different way. So when you look at Rafiki, where do you think the issue is in terms of the performance of homosexuality? Is it the way it has been westernized, you know, being performed publicly, or, okay, I think you got my question. And then now, are those dances in any way sexual? I came in late, but I saw that lady dancing in front of men and going around and going back. Is there any sexual implications to the dance? And then to Ugochi, I think what you are saying about the Niger Delta resonates with what is going on in Zimbabwe. I don't think, in my view, it's a question of awareness, because you showed us pictures of, I mean, people with soot in their arms and under their feet. You wouldn't say those people are not aware, right? They actually are aware of the soot that is there. But if I give you the Zimbabwean example, when people are in so much crisis and they know that policymakers don't care, they won't talk about issues that affect them because they know no one will address them. So they just, you know, follow comedians. I think on the Niger Delta you find that people following musicians, comedians, other things. But things that are political, they just leave them because they are tired.
Okay, thank you. Marco, please. Real quick. We're almost out of time.
I hope, Mr. Director, I'm allowed. I don't have a question, actually, so it might save time. I wanted to just congratulate for the presentations and say a little, maybe a few things which I heard from the presenters. I want to thank you very much, all of you three, for contributing to the body of knowledge to us as Africans. This is really important. We don't get many opportunities to do the work you're doing. For example, starting from Ugochi, I just thought about the issue of artificial intelligence, and then think about how Africans traditionally have relied on oral traditions where narratives are through the word of mouth. And I'm thinking, what does it mean for people, for example, to think about machines and brain and all this? You know, think about someone calling a person and they go to an answering machine, and that answering machine is not a person. So you made me think, like, what does this mean to us as Africans? Even the curriculum has to change in some ways across many levels, how we teach our people. You know, not to get emotional because you are dealing with the machine, not a person. But also I liked how there are small things, but they mean a lot. You use the we you and I think other people who are in your project. That's a very important thing. You know, you highlight some African aspects of how we see ourselves as one gathering. I went to one community. There was someone preaching.
Almost out of time.
Oh, okay. And then maybe I'll move to the second presentation, which was, no, it was the first actually, yours. I also liked how you're bringing in, you know, things which are about us, Africans, where you don't find those published a lot. It's really, really important that people who don't understand, they can see all these things published and they can read and find meanings to them, because other than that, it's like noise. It's like, what are the Africans doing? And we end up impressing the Western world. And also last one to Nancy. Thank you for the work you're doing. It's going to be hard, but stay there. It's not easy. Because the government is using all these cohesive apparatus and, you know, to define what they're using the same term we, but some of us really are in the middle. We're not even part of the we of the government. So you have,
right.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco. So 30 seconds to respond to the questions each person. Nancy, I'll start with you.
Okay. Dr. Rodwell, or Professor Rodwell, your question on how Rafiki has painted a picture of homosexuality being an African. So Rafiki's context, or rather the society, is a typical Kenyan society. And a typical Kenyan society is a society that is very conservative. They are, you know, religion is 80% Christians, so there's that notion. And homosexuality definitely in such a setup is usually very un-African in a way, like I have explained in my presentation. So that is how they paint the society, and this is where these two young girls are trying to like navigate the spaces, and it's very difficult for them to do that because of the so many oppressions. So that's really it.
All right, thank you. 30 seconds.
Yes, Professor Redwell. Klama has no sexual or sensual implications. That's all.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I think I'm also supporting somehow what you said. Looking at your presentation about Zimbabwe, maybe, but looking at it from the other way around, people are also talking about politics. We see posts about politics where they castigate the other opponents. They are not afraid. So if they are afraid of what will happen because of oppression, or maybe the government has failed in that area, why don't they talk about it if they are aware that those things are affecting our climate and it has an after effect? So that's where I don't agree so much, but we're in between. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to Drs. Hargoe, Dr. Okengwu, and soon to be Dr. Nancy Awori. Yes. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. And just a quick announcement. November 21st, we'll have another the last of the Colloquium series will take place here from 2 to 4:30 p.m. And that is going to be on thermodynamics, locality, and elite politics in Nigeria. And we've got another a set of excellent scholars that will be making their presentation on Monday. Please join us for a reception in honor of the scholars that presented today. And thanks everyone for coming. Hope to see you on Monday.